Welcome everybody to the very first episode of the Writer's Block. And I'm so happy to have my first guest here today, Will Raee. So, Will, do you want to tell me what was your journey in this industry like? But can you tell me it as if it were a log line?
Let me see. Boy meets girl. Girl
There we
dumps
go, the normal start.
boy. Boy gets depressed and joins the Film Art Institute, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
Nice. So you've done a lot of different stuff in this industry. You haven't just been a writer, you haven't just been a director, you haven't just been an editor. What's your favorite thing? Like, what fulfills you the most when it comes to working on projects in this industry?
Um, it's interesting because I think things evolve over time, and what you thought you would want to do in the beginning sort of changes. And
Mhm.
um, so I wanted to really sort of run a production company
Oh,
and
wow.
eventually, be a director. And just at that time, I think like a lot of tech companies were starting, and there was all these like young, cool startups.
Hmm.
And I wanted to sort of morph those two things together. So I created a production company that was like where we produced like technology shows and stuff. And
Hmm.
it was almost like infomercially, really.
Yeah.
Um, and then after a few years of doing that, and we were pretty successful in the beginning, and then little by little, as the tech industry dried up,
Hmm.
and the bottom fell out, it started to slow down our business a lot, and we started doing other things like documentaries. And but I was very happy sort of running the company, and I was very happy with the people I worked with, and it was like a big family. It was really fun, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I was really sort of like depressed, I think, from a creative
Hmm.
level, because
Yeah.
I was sort of just more like running a company instead of doing the things I really loved, um, which was really more producing and directing and editing at the
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
Um, so I packed it all up and head back to LA. When I say back to LA, I was originally from LA. This company was
Gotcha.
obviously not there. It was in Florida. But yeah, I think that for me, uh, it started out as directing, as the
Hmm.
thing that I really wanted to do, that I had a passion for.
Yeah.
And I still do have a passion for it, but um, I really discovered that I love writing as well. And this is
Yeah.
something that I really did not love. I used to just sort of do it as a means to an end, like,
Yeah.
oh, I write it because, no one else believes in me, so I have to write and do it for myself.
Yeah.
And that
At the
was
beginning,
always
if
my
you want to
passion.
get anything done, you just have to wear all the hats.
Yeah. And, it was just like I started out doing small projects, and then they
Hmm.
just got bigger and bigger, and until I
Wow.
was able to do, a couple feature films with some big
Yeah.
actors. So that
That's
was,
great.
yeah. And so things are just moving forward, and a lot of doors have opened up since. And
Yeah, that's
yeah, and
awesome.
yeah, but it was funny because I really didn't like writing, and
Yeah.
people used to always tell me I was good at it, and I was like, okay, well, you know, that's
Well, that's good,
great.
especially in this industry. If somebody starts telling you you're good at something, okay, well, maybe let's look a little more at that.
Yeah, and I think I kind of use the analogy like of or remember like sort of the end of The Matrix, the movie,
Hmm.
where Neo finally starts to see the Matrix like as code. And he's like, wow, his eyes, like, for me, writing was kind of like this thing that I didn't totally understand, like, what made it work, but then at some
Hmm.
point it just hit me. And
Yeah.
like once I learned how to manipulate the English words, and scripts, and like and make the characters go in certain directions and control the beat and all that stuff. Like once you really start to feel like you can do that, and talk in their voices,
Yeah.
and cry yourself when you're writing sad scenes,
Hmm.
and sort of feeling like emoting through the words. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like when it starts to take on a whole new level. So I used to just love editing and then directing, and then now it's like I love all three. I
Yeah.
even do a lot of editing jobs still, just because I love to keep my skills up.
Yeah.
And I try
Especially
to.
this industry, so much changes so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was always great. Like editing was kind of a fallback for me, like for, just making money and stuff. Like,
Oh
oh, okay,
yeah.
I'll just edit this job real quick and make,
Hmm.
a bunch of money and then I can pursue the other things I'm trying to do. And, but it just became I just became like obsessed with doing projects and always working, and
Hmm.
whether it's writing or editing. I used to produce a lot, but I really hate producing.
Hmm.
That I still do as sort of a means to an end.
Yeah.
But I'd say writing, directing a little bit, and editing. I don't really get a lot of opportunities to direct.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like one of those things like, you really have to be sort of like this big like director or doing a lot of directing work, um and or you have to be like sort of just doing a bunch of little stuff and or
Yeah.
commercial things that I don't really enjoy doing. So
Yeah. So, what would you say would be the most important skill that you learned before getting really started in this industry? Like, what's been the most helpful for you?
maybe music. I
Oh,
used to write
interesting.
music and I used to program and write. I wouldn't call myself a musician, but I used to be really good at programming,
Yeah.
back in the day when like all the new sequencing technology came out. And so I was writing, kind of like Depeche Mode kind of stuff, like that
Hmm.
sort of style, like a lot of electronic new wave
Yeah.
kind of things. And a couple of my bandmates ended up joining Marilyn Manson.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, which is funny
Wow.
because, we used to all hang out and I ended up doing a like documentary on Marilyn Manson. So that was one of the first things that we ended up doing
Hmm.
outside of the tech shows. And that opened a
Wow.
lot of doors too. That was a very successful documentary for us.
Yeah. So, what would be the project that you're most proud to have worked on? And what was your role on that project?
Well, I think it's yet to come.
Hmm.
I do feel like there's a couple projects that I really was proud um, of being a part of. But mostly, I would say what I do these days is like I'll partner up with somebody who's maybe not as experienced, and
Hmm.
I will try to elevate them,
Yeah.
in terms of especially like, with just in production in general, whether I'm producing something or, like I was just working with this one lady who is an actress, and she's actually like in the new Netflix series Kaleidoscope. She just
Oh,
her
wow.
career is
I've heard about that. It seems so cool.
yeah, yeah. So she's one of the leads, which is great. And,
Wow.
but I was trying to convince her, to try directing. And
Yeah.
she wrote a script and she really wanted me to be a producer on it. It's like, look, I really, she wanted to find a director. She wanted a female director. And I was like, you're a female Iranian, your dad is like one of the biggest cinematographers in the world and blah blah blah, like you should do this, you should do. So I really tried to support putting, I convinced her to do it, and she did a great job and she
That's
really enjoyed doing
awesome.
it.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes you don't
I
even
like to.
know, you don't even know what it is that you want to do until somebody kind of forces you to try it out.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, she's still going to, go. Her acting career is really taken off, but she really appreciated knowing how things work from behind the camera and learning how the process works. And I think every
Yeah.
actor and writer should try to do that. My
Yeah.
biggest advice is always like, I don't care how small it is, shoot it on your iPhone or whatever,
Yeah.
and write something that you can shoot on, for cheap.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was a movie I wrote with a friend of mine. Her name is Brenna Graziano, who used to work for me actually. And we wrote this film called Austin Found,
Hmm.
and it was just supposed to be like a little. I had this idea, like this story for like something like a $200,000 budget, which is still a lot for some people.
Yeah.
But that was something I knew I could get, and it ended up being like 1.3 million or something, because after we wrote the script, everybody was like, "Oh my God, we love this script." So it became kind of a hot little
Yeah.
indie script around town, and all these agents were like throwing these big actors our way, like
Oh my
huge
gosh. And it
names,
ended up with some
and
big
wanting to be in the movie.
actors.
I
You had
did,
some
yeah. I
big
ended
names
up
in
with like
there.
a boatload of great actors. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was all because of the script, because we paid them like nothing. I mean, we paid
Wow.
them scale or very small amounts compared to what they make on other things. They just did it because they believed in the script, and they met with me, and I convinced them like they should do
Wow.
this and blah blah blah. And it was a pretty good experience.
So
But that
persuasion,
was supposed to be like a little tiny
oh,
movie. I'm sorry.
persuasion's another good skill to bring into this.
Yeah. I think, you just have to be confident when you meet with actors and
Yeah,
have a
absolutely.
passion and vision for them,
Yeah.
for what you're doing.
So, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned now that you've moved on to the writing side?
Mm, well, I think there was a famous actor who turned who turned producer, um, and Bob Evans, and you should watch this documentary called "The Kid Stays in the Picture,"
Oh, okay.
and
Write that down.
he talks about how uh, property is key, like owning a script, whether you write it or own it. So I feel like if I was to start all over again, I would just really focus on writing and trying to have that open up the doors instead of, running a production company and producing for so many years. I mean, I produced, some fairly notable shows,
Mhm.
and like the Chris Angel Mind Freak series. I did, I helped create 1,000 Ways to Die. I
Mhm.
was a writer, producer, director on that. Um, and those were big hits, but those weren't really what I wanted to do because they weren't scripted series per se.
Yeah.
I really wanted to work in the scripted world.
Mhm.
So I had to start writing more.
Great. So, what do you think every aspiring screenwriter should be doing to kind of prepare themselves and put themselves in the best position to enter this industry?
Well, um, I got into this industry not knowing anyone in it
Mm.
at all. So it was really, it was kind of a lot of learning. Uh, I just wish someone had told me, just, really focus on the writing part, because that's what's going to open the doors. But I would say that, like, hang out with other writers, like,
Mhm.
build your world, your network. I mean, you have especially like if you live in LA or somewhere, you have uh, so many people you could be friends with so many people. It's like, I would just say like, find writer friends, find director friends, find actor friends, like just surround yourself by people in the industry and, create a team, try to find other people who share the same sort of vision you share,
Mhm.
and start making little short films and start creating online content and build yourself up so you can find an agent or a manager, especially a manager,
Mhm.
uh, and who sees what direction you're going in. There's plenty of younger managers who are looking for younger talent.
Mhm.
So I would say that's the most important thing, building a network.
Great. So, coming from doing series and things like that, and now you've been doing a lot of films, what would you say the biggest difference between working on either one would be?
Yeah, I think that from a writer's point of view, working on a film, you really have complete freedom to, create this 2 hour, whatever, 90-minute, 2 hour
Hmm.
block story. And then you give it to the world and you say, hey, world, this is my this is my movie, and like it or hate it, whatever, right?
Hmm.
But it's pretty much done. Like for me, writing. and directing are like really like, as a filmmaker, like movies offer like the complete freedom,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you know, when you get into television, it's much more organized in a way that's like corporate in a way. There's so many uh, opinions. There's so
Yeah.
many people involved in the process.
Getting notes back from the
And
studios. You got
you're
to go back
writing,
on
yeah,
board.
you're part of a bigger team. I mean, even when you're writing film, like sometimes you're part of a team as well. But when you're in TV, you're definitely part of a team
Yeah.
that consists of like a dozen executive producers, and everybody has a say, and everybody wants this. And it's about scheduling, and the writing is about, like keeping the series going, creating a bunch of stuff that may not even that may not even be, it's like just having, like trying to keep this momentum going,
Yeah.
you know. So the better series for me are the ones that don't do that so much, and they just sort of, um, they really are more like films.
Yeah.
So I prefer, like the Breaking Bads and those kind of
Mhm.
things, like where, it feels like you're watching a film, a long,
Mhm.
long, long film. And I really love the limited series format the most.
Yeah. The limited series is really fun. And I've watched movies where I was like, I wish this was a limited series because you could have delved into it even more. But
Oh,
those are nice because
totally.
there's not that pressure on, okay, well, what's going to happen next and forcing it into a what's going to happen next. But you do
Yeah.
get that like detail and you get to go so far into the story and the characters and
I
all of
feel like
that.
the industry is going to go more and more in that direction. It used to
Mhm.
be like they didn't even have departments for, it was kind of like just mixed in with TV, like movie of the week, or, like a, they would call it like a mini series.
Hmm.
Um, but now, with the way that there's, streamers don't necessarily adhere to commercials and stuff like that. So, you can make it like an event rather than just a one-off movie,
Yeah.
and they're cheaper to produce typically,
Hmm.
because you're doing a volume, so you're getting a
Yeah.
little bit more. So
Yeah. So what would you I guess that really answers the question of what would be your favorite trend in the industry right now? Would you say limited series? Okay.
yeah,
So then I have to
that's
ask,
what I'm
what's your
focused on.
favorite?
What's my favorite?
Yeah.
Chernobyl, I think, is my favorite
Ooh.
limited series.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's that one
like
on?
I HBO.
HBO. I don't think I've heard of
Yeah.
that. Sounds
Oh, it won like every Emmy like
I
2 years
missed
ago.
this. Oh, maybe 2 years ago. Okay, maybe I've just forgotten.
It's interesting because the writer came from like Craig Mazin. He came from like doing films that were like, I think like comedy, and like just nothing like this big dramatic series. And the director was also like a commercial director or something like that. They were just like the least likely candidates to do something like this. And I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I
They
remember when
always
I
seem
did
to
my
bring
movie
something
too.
so different.
Yeah, but it's just like you can't box people in. That's the thing that I hate about this industry is like they're like, oh, you're a comedy guy or you're a horror guy.
Yeah.
I think there's been some great directors recently, writers who have jumped from comedy and have gone into drama,
Yeah.
and it's really like, oh wow, you can do more than, because if you're a good storyteller, you can tell a horror story, you can tell a comedy, you can
Yeah.
tell. I think comedy is a little bit harder than anything else, but I feel like, um, if you can do those things, you can do everything.
Hmm.
Like I just don't
Absolutely.
believe. I mean, there's certain people who may not agree with that or who might
Hmm.
be good at what, just. But for me, I like to analyze a film and analyze the writing and try. Like even when I wrote a so I'm doing a series right now, based on the Shah of Iran.
Mm.
It's kind of like the Queen,
Oh,
but
interesting.
like the Iranian Persian version of the of
Hmm.
the of the Queen. And it's about the Shah, and it's sort of like I looked at Chernobyl and I studied Craig's scripts, and I was really like, okay, I can try to go after this style. And the
Mhm.
greatest compliment I got is like so first of all, people who've read it have loved it. So I'm like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But a couple of people even said, oh, I kind of like this. Kind of reminds me of Chernobyl style. And I was like, oh, are you
You're like,
kidding me?
that's it. That's
That's
exactly
it.
what I meant.
Right. I mean, so I felt really good about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great, great. Okay, so speaking of, can you give us like a little teaser of what's coming next for you? What's in the works?
Yes, I've been working with the family that invented Puma and Adidas.
Oh,
So
wow.
the Dosser family. So I
Yeah.
got the life rights to the Adidas family dynasty story, and I've been I've developed a series around that, which we actually pitched to MGM, and they offered us a deal.
Oh,
Uh,
that's amazing.
yeah, yeah. But the thing is, they got like bought out by Amazon,
Right,
and
right.
it became sort of like, well, it's all up to Amazon now. And if Amazon ended up passing on the series, then we couldn't go anywhere else with it because very
Yeah.
few people, very few, like you can't go to Netflix because, now they all consider MGM part of Amazon, which is their competition.
Yeah.
So it's being like all the studios are sort of, there's a lot of studios have been gobbled up and by these big streamers, and they can't work with other streamers.
Yeah.
So, our concern with the MGM deal was as good, and it was a great deal. But uh, it's like if Amazon didn't want to do it, then they would have our project for 3 years tied
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
and that just wasn't going to fly
Business
with us.
gets in the
So
way of just making stuff.
yeah, we found some independent financiers
Hmm.
who are very wealthy, and um, we're trying to produce it through them now, and
Great.
they're working on getting the financing. As you know, I've told you,
Hmm.
uh, it's been a little tricky,
Yeah.
but we're trying to produce it independently right now. And if not, we can go out with it to some of the other streamers as well.
Yeah.
We have met with a few of them who really do
Yeah.
like it as well.
Oh, that's great. So it's
And
nice to have different options available. Okay.
yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
tell us in the comments, are you Adidas or Puma? What's your go-to? And then you'll have to
Um,
watch a series when it comes out.
right. I think I'm definitely Team Adidas.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was Team Puma, but I switched over
Oh,
to
you switched it
Adidas.
up on them.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's it been like looking into the history as you're kind of preparing for a show like that?
Well, so that's my thing. Everybody, another little advice I would give somebody is try to find a niche,
Hmm.
like, um, and then you can always go into other things later on in your career, as I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
But for me, like two things, well, kind of two things are sort of important. Branding is very important in this industry. That was one thing that I learned too late. So,
Yeah.
like somebody like Quentin Tarantino, he
Hmm.
created a brand, a style, and Wes Anderson, same thing.
Yeah.
They're known for their styles but it's like a branding thing. They
Absolutely.
always sort of do the same thing. Whereas there's other directors who are just as talented, really, but they tend to do like all kinds of different things.
Hmm.
It's really more about the story.
Yeah.
Whereas, these directors really focus on writer directors who focus on a very unique kind of style.
Hmm.
But wait, what was your question before I jumped into that?
I question.
It's
Oh,
sort of like
looking into the
what?
history of
Okay,
Adidas
so
Puma.
yeah. So for me, I really love history, and
Yeah.
my thing is, I loved Oliver Stone movies growing up, and he's a writer director who I just got to meet him actually just couple weeks ago.
Oh, that must have been
Um,
so
yeah,
cool.
yeah, it was cool. I got to talk to him for a while, and it
Wow.
was like, you're the one who inspired me to do what I do. Um, but the thing that I would do, what I like doing is I like going into history, and I like studying the hell out of something
Hmm.
and really trying to find these stories, because there's so many great stories in history. Like Hollywood just regurgitates a bunch of crap. I hate it. And it's really just about making, hundreds of millions or
Yeah.
more, dollars.
The
Really, that's what
business, not the story.
yeah, but but I kind of come from like that 70s, 80s kind of filmmaking. That's what I grew up on.
Yeah.
Um, Sort of the golden age of film. And, for me, it's finding those stories in history and bringing them to light, because there's so many amazing stories. Even like this Adidas, story. This is the family that started Adidas and Puma were two rival brothers
Yeah.
who couldn't stand each other. And
Mhm.
eventually their rivalry pushed them harder and harder to be the best until they were like the two biggest sports companies in the world.
I mean, it
And
kind of worked.
it did. Those are the kind of things as a writer I really love, is just diving in, finding the story there, and then presenting it in a way that keeps true to the history, or at least, because there's history, everybody has different opinions about how things went. You could read, like on the Shaw Project, there's like 6 different books about, how the 1953 coup d'etat happened in
Mm,
Iran, and how the government was toppled and how the coup happened. And it's like everybody wants to take credit for it. Like everybody
mhm.
has their own version of it, and you have to find
Yeah.
the truth, or what is closest to the truth. And
Yeah.
that's what's really interesting. So I try to stay as close to the truth as possible and take an unbiased approach. And
Yeah.
then you can make it entertaining, which is a whole, that's the fun part.
Yeah. Making it like, okay, everybody's gonna
Yeah.
rush to see this
Because you have to
one.
write around all these historical events that happened.
Yeah.
A lot of it recorded history, and you have to sort of weave it all together, like glue it all together in a way,
Yeah.
all these different things that happen to make it interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That it's definitely always interesting to see how something like that comes together. And I'm also a big history nerd, so I always
Yeah.
love when I'm really excited to see Oppenheimer, just because I just think it's going to be so interesting seeing how, you're
Right.
telling that story. So, and I saw the trailer in IMAX before we saw Avatar, and I was like, "Oh my God."
Wow.
Okay,
Cool. Yeah.
thank you so much for talking with me today. It was really
I
nice.
wasn't stalking you.
Yeah, no, only talking, only talking. It was really nice to hear about your journey into this industry and what you've learned going from all sorts of different aspects of the industry and doing different jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
If anybody wants to follow Will and keep up with what he's doing and the projects he's working on, I will have all of that in the description of this video. And thank you again, Will. Do you have any last
You're
words before
welcome.
we finish up?
Um, just I think like the important thing is to never give up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people I know who started have, gave up along the way because, they wanted to security and stuff like that in terms of financing, or they want to get married and have kids and have families and stuff. And that's all important. So whoever you end up with, make sure that they're supportive of your career. Just never give up, because the people who don't give up eventually do make it.
Mm-hmm.
Like at some level, whether you're mid-level or you're at the top of the game, you always do get somewhere, depending on how much natural gift you have for writing and whatever. No matter what, you'll still get a job and make it in the
Yeah.
industry to a certain degree. And how talented you are only it is, will, and also maybe like there's some nepotism too sometimes, so that helps too.
Yeah, that always, helps out with this industry. But
Talent and nepotism, those are
those are the
the
building blocks of the entertainment industry.
building blocks of the writing. Yeah, yeah. Well, and money, I say. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It was so nice talking to you, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Take
Awesome.
care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.